Welcome to the Access to Innovators podcast, powered by the premier life skills university, High Point University.
Hello, thank you for joining us. My name is Wendell Epps. I am a junior at High Point University majoring in sports media, and today I'm going to be going one-on-one with 5 questions for former U.S. Ambassador, FCC Chairman, and High Point University's global leader in residence, Mr. Bill Kennard. Mr. Kennard, thank you so much for joining us today.
It is a great pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So, first question for you here, 5G. Big deal, and in today's society, it seems like it's starting to sort of become a race for a lot of companies with 5G. Do you think this is a race? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it is certainly a race. It's not only a race domestically, as the 3 major wireless carriers, AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile, are racing to deploy 5G networks at scale, and that work is well underway. But it's also a race internationally, because the U.S. standards for 5G differ from the standards that the Chinese telecom companies are deploying. And so we are trying in the United States, as a matter of government policy, to deploy our 5G networks throughout Europe and throughout the rest of the world.
And I mean, it's just crazy to see how it's changed. I know earlier this morning you were talking to Dr. Cobain and you were mentioning the progression from 2G to 5G. How did you see that ever coming, that progression?
Well, it's the old adage, if they build it, they will come. And with each different transmission standard of wireless phones, 2G, 3G, 4G, now 5G, each of those standards has created a plethora of new applications. So in 4G, for example, we had location technology. So that enabled companies like Uber and Lyft and DoorDash and GPS on your phone and in your cars and weather apps that give you, that know where you are and can tell you what the weather's going to be. So we don't know exactly what 5G will bring, but it's sure to bring something really significant. We're seeing early glimpses of what 5G will bring, and there's some really interesting developments around virtual reality, for example, for consumers. In the business space, 5G will enable telemedicine, robotics, autonomous cars in ways that are fairly revolutionary and will change the way people live.
And that definitely excites someone like myself, someone who's getting ready to enter the professional industry in a couple years after I graduate from college. And just one of those things where 100 years ago, we never really envisioned this, but also with the E-rate program that you were able to start, that just created immense wonders for students like myself. So can you speak a little bit about the E-rate program? What was your vision when you started it, and did you ever envision that it was going to be the success that it is today?
Well, it was a phenomenally successful and needed program. The E-rate is basically a way that government subsidizes the deployment of internet networks throughout the country, focusing on schools, public and private, and libraries. It was not my vision. It was the vision of former Vice President Al Gore, who you may recall coined the phrase the information superhighway. He was one of the people who really saw the vision of technology uplifting people around the world before most people were even thinking about it. And so we were able to get a provision in the Telecommunications Act that authorized the FCC to subsidize the deployment of these networks. And it's changed the lives of many, many people in particularly rural and inner city schools who would not have internet access but for the E-rate.
And for schools, it's just helped out immensely. You see libraries, see all the technological resources that schools have. And, now it's not really about the pencil and paper as much. You have the laptops, you have people bring in MacBooks, iPads. So where do you see that going 15 years from now? Because 15 years back, that stuff didn't even exist.
Well, technology obviously will continue to evolve. Remember, most of us still remember walking into a classroom and staring at a blackboard, right? And we've now entered an era where most people are bringing laptops to school, and the pandemic has, in many interesting ways, accelerated the use of technology to learn in different environments, whether you're at home or away from school. And I think a lot of innovation will come around that, distributed networks where people can learn from wherever they are using connectivity over 5G networks or any broadband networks for that matter.
And just the ability that we have with technology to be able to communicate with people worldwide. And I know you have experience with that, communicating via social media platforms as well. So what are your thoughts on that and us just
period of time? We've gone from a media environment which was basically point to multi-point, think broadcasting or cable, where you have one provider of information, to a environment where everyone's a publisher. It's multi-point to everywhere. So anyone who has a Facebook page is now a publisher, or Instagram or Snapchat or whatever you use. And that has fundamentally changed the media environment and the way people communicate, the way advertisers reach people, the way that talent is developed. YouTube in particular, I read recently that YouTube has surpassed any other mode of television as most watched. So more than cable, more than broadcast TV, people are getting their video over YouTube. And that is an environment where everyone can produce whatever content they want and distribute it very broadly. So the world is changing very quickly.
It is really amazing. I'm glad you brought up YouTube because that is just a big deal. You're seeing all these content creators now, on platforms like YouTube or Snapchat or TikTok, just posting their own content and actually being able to, inspire other society, and the whole idea where you can get your latest sports news, politics, entertainment, all of that through YouTube and platforms like that. So especially for the younger generation out there, what are some advice that you can give them on how they can proficiently handle and utilize social media as a whole?
Well, I would think for young people, particularly folks like you who are thinking about a career in broadcasting, you got to think very, very broadly about what your opportunities are, because there are a number of new digital platforms that are emerging every day. They're going to create tremendous opportunity for young people who want to pursue their dreams and innovate around content generation in ways that just haven't happened before. So it's really exciting.
It is very exciting, and I'm just very thrilled to see everything that's been able to come and what's to come next. And especially here, High Point University, we take a lot of pride, the premier life skills university. Leadership's a big thing. That's also something you were discussing with Dr. Cobain earlier. So what's some advice that you can give to current college students right now that are trying to be successful leaders in the world?
Well, I've always believed that leadership is fundamentally an act of service. If you think of leadership as not about you, but about the people that you can inspire and motivate, then you will become, I think, a more effective leader. The most effective leaders that I have seen in my career, and I would certainly put Dr. Cobain in this category, are ones that are able to do three things. They can chart a vision, they know how to execute to make that vision happen, and they have compassion. They connect with people. They're humble. They understand that it's not about them, but it's about getting other people to connect with their vision and execute that vision and get things done and change things in really significant ways. And I've seen him do that, and the great leaders that I have known in my life all have those fundamental traits.
It's amazing just to see the qualities and the past you can go if you're a real leader in society. And it's one of those things where some people think, I have to have successful money, I have to be in a good position, a nice house to be a leader. But no, you can be a leader right from the start in college. So just like thinking back on all the honors and awards you've gotten, because you've received a lot of them and well-deserved honors for sure. Are there any ones that really stick out to you in particular, or kind of one that you felt like was that turning point where it's like, okay, like I actually feel like this is something like I'm really starting to become something special here?
Frankly, I try not to think about that because then you're starting to rest on past laurels, and I'm not done yet. I want to keep moving, but I will say that categorically the awards that I've received for the work that I've done to to help people who were underserved by technology are the ones that are most meaningful to me. And there are a number of people around the country who have benefited from some of the decisions that I was fortunate enough to make in a position of, government authority. They didn't know who I was, but it changed their lives in ways that are significant. And to be recognized for that is the most meaningful thing that I've been able to achieve.
And especially, being the first African-American person to do a lot of this, I mean, that really says a lot. So, how great does that make you feel, just knowing that you are inspiring even people like myself, a young African-American male, to go out and do these greater things for the good of society?
Well, first, I'm very blessed. I've had some wonderful opportunities and had some great mentors. But I often reflect on the fact that the most important thing about being the first African American to do anything is to make sure you're not the last, right? And to reflect on what got you there, who helped you along the way, and then pay it forward. And try to do that for other folks that are coming behind you. So that I want us to live in a society where it's not remarkable that I or anyone else is the first African American to do anything. That there are so many of us, and so many of us have achieved those levels of success and recognition that, there's once you have third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, then it's not remarkable that you're the first anymore, right? And we need to always understand that we can't take that progress for granted. That just because you've had a first doesn't necessarily mean there'll be a second, third, fourth, or fifth. We have to work at it. We all have to help those who are coming behind us to open those doors a little wider.
I think that's a great point you make there. It's a collaborative effort. It's, something starts, you got to keep on pushing, keep on going. And, it's one of those things where, hopefully, sometime in the near future, it's not about, the first African-American, the first female to do this. Is one of those things where you just start a trend and
right.
you're inspiring, that next generation.
Exactly right. And that's your generation.
Yes.
So I'm looking for big things from you, Wendell.
I'm definitely striving for big things, and it's one of those things here where we do take a pride here at High Point University in leadership and effective communication. I'm curious to know, with the rise of technology, you're seeing certain things like face-to-face communication probably not happening as much. You see a lot of text messages, FaceTimes, things of that nature. Are there any concerns for you in that regard of how that might go for my generation specifically?
It's interesting. We've all lived through this awful pandemic where we've had to work remotely. And as a society, we've managed through it. Thanks in part to these broadband networks we were just talking about. Imagine if the pandemic hit before we had broadband in most people's homes and offices and you couldn't do Zoom calls remotely. But putting that aside, what we're finding is people crave the human interaction. They understand that even though remote working has its benefits in terms of efficiency and not having to put people on airplanes to travel, there is something that's lost when you can't meet people face to face and pick up on all the nonverbal cues that are a big part of the way people communicate effectively with one another. So I think it's important, particularly for folks in your generation, to realize that those skills of face-to-face communication are important. You need to learn those. You need to focus on those in job interviews and in dealing with your superiors and subordinates when you get in the workforce. There is a certain value to that, and we don't want to lose it.
That's a great point you make there. I mean, having those skills of knowing how to communicate with people face to face, no matter what job field you enter in. Some people may say, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm just going to work in a laboratory. I don't have to know how to connect with people face to face. But no, it's important no matter what you do, because that's what's ultimately going to help you move up the chains, get more money, get more recognition, and just gain a better reputation overall.
Absolutely.
And final question for you here, Mr. Kennard. Dr. Cobain, wonderful president at High Point University, often says, out of adversity comes abundance. So I'd like to know for you, is there any time where you felt like you had to overcome something, a challenge, some sort of adversity where you were able to take a lot from it?
Oh, many times. I mean, there are many times in my career where I thought that I was very close to being a failure. at different times, usually when I was making a career change or stepping into a new job. And what you find over time is the more times you get yourself out of your comfort zone and try new things and challenge yourself in different ways, you grow, and it makes you better. And then the next time you feel a little more confident, and you get to a point in life where you kind of welcome the challenge, right? It's just something that you're looking forward to. It took me a long time to get there, but I would say the biggest challenge, to get to your question, was my first job in government was very politically difficult. Washington is a mean place, and politics is a blood sport, as it's often said. And as a lawyer, I wasn't fully prepared for that, not being a politician. But I made it through. We got some things done. But that was a challenging time.
And that's what it's all about, embracing those challenges and
Right.
using it just to move forward. It's just one of those things, too. I'm sure, like, when you look back on all those challenges you faced, you're just like, wow, like, that actually happened, but I was able to overcome that. And, for sometimes younger people, they get stuck up in these challenges and they kind of face one sort of adversity and they kind of just get deflated by that. What advice would you give to people that are just trying to push through all of that?
Well, I think that the best advice I have is that standing still is not an option. There are a lot of folks that I've met in my career I kind of started with who practicing law, and they continued to do that their whole career. And they say to me, gee, you've done so many interesting different things. And I always think, try to be kind. I don't say it quite like this, but I said, you could have too. But, there was for whatever reason, whether you didn't want to leave the money or you were afraid of failure, they didn't do it, right? And that's a lost opportunity. And so I always tell young people like yourself, you got to get outside your comfort zone, try new things. When you think you're going to fail is probably when you're on the cusp of success. Mario Andretti, a famous race car driver, was once asked, what made you different from your peers? Why are you so good? And he said, well, I always know that when I'm going around a curve and I'm just about to lose it all and crash, that's when I know I'm doing exactly what I should do, right? You're just on the edge. And you should think of some of the life challenges that you're going to have in that vein. Push yourself. Get outside your comfort zone. Do things you haven't done before. Meet people that you wouldn't ordinarily connect with. It'll change you in ways that are really significant and beneficial.
You heard it here first, folks. Mr. Kennard saying, go ahead, push forth, embrace that challenge, and just never quit. Keep on dreaming. Keep on dreaming. All right, well, thank you so much for sharing your extraordinary advice and achievements with us today, Mr. Kennard. We are so grateful for your commitment to mentoring HBU students and joining a remarkable, innovative program that inspires our students as well as our campus community. I just really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today.
Well, it's my pleasure, and I'm going to be watching for you, expecting big things, Wendell.
I appreciate that. So thank you all for joining us on the Access to Innovators podcast, powered by High Point University.